Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. Today is an early summer day, June 13th. I guess not technically summer yet. It's a little chilly out and a little rainy today, but you know, still a nice day. I hope the weather's great where you're at, and I hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to look at Lumion Basics. Lumion is a real-time rendering engine, and we're going to end up with an image like we see on the screen here. Before we jump into the tutorial, head over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. Click on subscribe, click on the little bell to receive all the notifications. I am in the middle of a series of real-time rendering engine videos, so you'll be able to learn Enscape, Twinmotion, Lumion, see which one you like better for different applications. Alright, connect with me on Instagram at my first name _ my last name. See what I'm up to, see what my latest video is. Right now I'm teaching a summer class, design visualization with my students. It's a rendering course. Things are going really well. The students are really enjoying the real-time rendering engines. Alright, so Lumion, I'm at lumion.com, and here's where we can find all things Lumion. Now, if you're a student, I searched Lumion student version and I found Lumion 2023 is now available. Get your free student license. How great is that? A free student license. So I clicked on that and it took me over to Lumion for students. So you want to get your free student license. The other thing is you'll want to get live sync for whatever software you're using. I'm using Rhino, so I went to Food for Rhino and I searched Lumion Live Sync for Rhino and I downloaded that, and we'll see what that does for us in a little bit. Alright, let's dive into the tutorial. Okay, we're actually going to start out in Rhino, and we're going to have something similar to what you see on the screen here. If I minimize my window here, we're going to have a little model here of a little pavilion that we can bring into Lumion and start to add materials to and set up a camera view and all those good things. Alright, so also here's our little outline. Here's what we're going to cover today. So quite a few topics to cover. So the first one was download the student version of Lumion 2023. So at the time of this video, that's the version of Lumion that I'm looking at. So if you're a student, go ahead and download it. If you're not a student, you can download the trial version. Okay, Lumion Live Sync for Rhino. We looked at that on Food for Rhino where we could find that. And what that does is it just puts a Lumion tab, Lumion panel, tab, whatever you want to call it, on the main Windows toolbar there, and we could start live sync. We'll do that once we have Lumion set up. Alright, so we're going to make a new model here. So we're going to go to File, New, and we're going to choose large objects, inches, feet, and inches. Large objects, inches, feet, and inches. So large objects, something bigger than a truck, and we're going to work in the inches as our main unit. Alright, so we're going to go to our perspective view, and we're going to set up the grid. So I'm going to type in the shortcut DOC for document properties. So DOC, enter, and I'm going to grid, and I'm going to make the grid line count 100. Minor grid lines every 12 inches, so 1 foot. Major lines every 10 minor, so every 10 feet I'm going to have a minor grid line. And I'm going to change my snap spacing to 12 inches or 1 foot. Alright, so I'm going to be very organized with my layers, so I'm going to take layer 1. This one I'm going to call floor, and I'm going to make that current. And I'm going to draw a box using my grid snap. So I'm turning my grid snap on and I'm snapping to the origin where the X and the Y axes meet, and I'm going to make this 20 by 40, and I'm just looking at the major grid lines so I can see the 20, the 2 major grid lines, and the 4 major grid lines in this direction. And I'm going to make this -6 inches. Alright, so that's my floor. Now I'm going to make some other objects, but I think we can get the live sync working, like just get that going as we start to model these objects and see how that's working in Lumion. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and we'll call it Lumion Basics. Okay, so I have that file saved. So I'm going to sync this up with Lumion. So in Lumion, I'm going to go over and create a new file. And I'm going to create the plain environment. I'm just going to use that template. So I'm going to double click on that. Get that started up. Okay, so I'm going to head back over to Rhino. And I'm going to go to Lumion Start Live Sync. And then I'm going to head it back over to Lumion. And we're going to see that we have our floor object there. And that floor right now is competing with the plain environment grass. So you're seeing this flicker. So we're going to have to make sure that we move everything up to a positive Z height. Right now this is going down in a negative Z height. So I'll head back over to Rhino. And I'll make the next layer. I'm going to make the next layer. I'm going to call this patio. And I'm making that current. And I'm going to draw a patio. I'm going to use the box command. And I'm going to stay 2 major grid lines away in all directions. So let's see. That should look something like that. And I'm going to make that negative 6 inches. Okay, so there's my patio. And if I go to my front view, I'm just going to move that down. Okay, so now in my perspective view, we see that. Okay, so that's my patio. The next thing I'm going to make is I'm going to make something called grass. And we're going to see, because I named this grass, Lumion's pretty smart. It's going to put a grass material on it. I might not want a grass material on it, but it's going to put it anyway. And I can always do that by changing the name of this layer. Okay. So let's check this out. We got patio. We're going to make a grass now. So I'm going to type in box, and I'm going to stay 2 major grid lines away in all directions. So I'm going to start there, and 2 major grid lines away puts me there. I'm going to make this negative 6 inches, and I'm going to go to my front view, and I'm going to move this. Okay, so there's all 3 of my objects here. I'm going to go to perspective view. Okay, so that should be syncing over here in Lumion, but we're not seeing everything because it's all below grade. So if I go back to Rhino and I go to a front view and I move all of this up so that's from that point, so it sits above grade. Right there, it's sitting above grade. And I go to my perspective view and I head on over to Lumion. You see that's been sync or sunk. Sink or sunk, whatever the past tense of sink is. So there's my 3 objects sitting in Lumion. Alright, fantastic. Now let's go back over to Rhino and finish modeling this out. I'm going to keep saving as I go. So I'm going to make a couple walls. So I'm going to make a walls layer. Make that current. And I'm going to draw a wall. So I'm going to type in box. I'm going to draw it from this corner. And I'm going to draw it because I'm not starting at the origin because this has been lifted off the origin. So I have to use the @ symbol. And then I'm using 20 feet in the X, comma, 6 inches in the Y. So that made my length and depth of it. Now my height, I'm going to make this 10 feet. Alright, so that's that one there. And I'm going to draw another one. I want to see the grid for this. So, well, actually, here's what I'll do. I'm just going to copy this one. I'm going to copy it from its endpoint to that endpoint there. And I'm just going to move it in going to move it in 10 feet. Okay, so that's going to be my little cantilever. Now I'm going to take layer 5, I'm going to call this roof, make it current, and give it a color. I'll give it a black color. And I'm going to copy this object from its bottom point to the top of the wall. And I'm going to select it, right click on the layer roof, and choose change object layer. Okay, so here is my pavilion. Alright, so I'm going to save this file, Control S, head on over to Lumion, and we can see that all ready to go there. Alright, so let's look at our outline. Let's follow our outline a little bit here. So we have looked at downloading the student version. We've looked at Lumion Live Sync. We've modeled some rhino geometry. Use Live Sync for rhino, the play button. Okay, so that's our Lumion Live Sync. Then we have navigation. Okay, so before I jump into navigation, I just want to look at one thing. I want to look at how these objects have come into Rhino and talk a little bit about that. Not come into Rhino, but how they've come into Lumion, and talk a little bit about that. Okay, so at the top of the screen I have the layers, and I've locked my layers to always show layers so I don't have to hover over it. So I just clicked on this little toggle here to always show layers. And if I make layer 2 current just by double clicking on it, and then I hide layer 1, that hides my entire model. So everything that comes in from Rhino is put on one layer. I don't love that. That's what I have to work with right now. So I'm going to double click on this to rename this layer. I'm going to call this Rhino model. And I'm going to double click on everything's double click in Lumion. So if you just remember that, when in doubt, double click. So I'm going to double click on that. That's my Rhino model. Okay, if I want to assign materials to this model, so I'm going to head on down here in the lower left. I'm going to click on materials, and it says click on an imported model to modify its material. So I could click on this here. And what we're going to see is it's really one object right now. So if I go to, let's go over to landscape, and let's go to 3D grass. And let's say I was going to put one of these 3D grass materials. Look at that. My whole model is plaid. My whole model is plaid grass. So we need to deal with that. So I'm going to double click on the little check mark on the lower right of my window and get rid of this plaid grass. Okay, where'd my file go? Oh no. So it didn't like that at all. And I didn't save the Lumion, but it's no big deal because I'm not worried because I'm live syncing it from Rhino. Alright, so let's go to load. Let's go to, not load, but let's go to create new. Let's go to the plane environment. Alright, so that might happen to you at home, a little crash, but not to worry because we have everything we need in Rhino. So I'm going to go to Rhino and I'm going to go to Lumion, start live sync, head back over to Lumion. There is my model there. Alright, so we were talking about materials and what's going on with the materials, and you saw it put a plaid material on the entire building. So let's see if we can replicate that. So let's go to layer 1. Let's double click on it to rename it. Let's call this Rhino model. And we'll double click on the check mark to end that. And let's go to materials on the lower left here. And let's click on our object, which is one object right now. It sees it as one object. I'm on 3D grass. I'm going to put that plaid material on there. Okay. I'm going to click the check mark in the lower right. How about I save this file? So I'm going to click on the save, and when I save my first file, I can't do a save, I have to do a save as. So I click on save as, and this is going to be my Lumion Basics. Pretty excited about Lumion videos. So I'm going to make a series of these Lumion videos for you guys to learn from. So pretty pumped up about that. Okay. So we've saved that. So let's go ahead and load. Let's go to build mode. Double click on build mode. Alright, cool. So here we are looking at this in build mode. Maybe that's what happened before. Maybe it didn't crash. Maybe I just had to go to build mode. You guys let me know in the comments if that was the case. So here's my rhino model. So I want to separate this model by materials. So I can do that over in Rhino. I can go ahead and just make materials. So I'm going to make a floor material. So I'm just clicking on the little circle here, and I'm just going to name it floor and click OK. And I'm going to name this one patio and click OK. I'll name this one grass, and it's going to put a default grass material on it, and we'll look at changing that. And I'm going to name this one walls, and I'm going to name this one roof. So they're all going to be separate objects to apply materials to in Lumion. I'm just going to save this, head back over to Lumion. Okay, so everything is blank now except for that grass, material grass. As I hover over this, it says material grass, this says material patio, this is material floor, material walls, and material roof. So it's actually made a material in Lumion already called material roof and so on. So that's pretty cool. I like that it's made a material already, and we're going to be able to change those materials. So let's head back over to Rhino for a second, and let's change the grass. I'm going to call this one landscape, so it doesn't put a grass material on it. I'm going to save that, head on over to Lumion. Okay, so that's working really good. That's coming out awesome. All right, what is next on our agenda? Okay, so next is navigation. Okay, so how do we navigate inside of Lumion? So if I go back to Lumion and I go to my lower right, there's a little question mark there. It's a little help button there, and it says in the upper right, you see it says right mouse button always. Right mouse button allows you to rotate using the mouse. So the right mouse button allows you to orbit, 3D orbit. And then you can use your WASD keys to move in and out of the model and over panning and all that good stuff. So W will zoom in, S will zoom out, Q will move the model down, and E will move the model up, A will pan. A is panning left and D is panning right, so you can see that. And then my right mouse button will orbit the model, and my wheel will zoom in and out. And if you add the shift key to any of that stuff, it will speed it up. If you add the space bar, it will slow it down. Alright, so that's a little bit about navigation. I wanna paint some terrain on this. We haven't got there yet. One thing is settings. Okay, so we did navigation, the other thing is settings. So let's look at settings before I start doing some painting. So in the lower right I have a settings, and I can click on that, and this is the default. So for editor quality, the default is high. For editor resolution, the default is 100%. Use proxies is off. High quality trees is on. Auto update preview is off. So basically, you can start to change these. If your computer starts to slow down, if you're working with a really heavy model and it's not quite working as fast as you want it to, you can start to change some of these settings under settings. Okay, let's head back. All right, let's do some painting. Let's see if we can get this to work. So under landscape, I can choose. I'll choose one of these so we can see. I'll choose this farmland East Rock. And if I hold my mouse down, my left mouse button, it's starting to show up by me holding that down. If I want that to show up faster, I can change my brush speed down at the bottom. I'm going to change it all the way up. So this allows me to go around and paint, essentially paint some landscape onto the landscape level. And I can change that landscape to different materials. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with this American gravel and just leave it like that. So I think that's a pretty cool feature, just to go ahead and paint right away on the object. So I wanted you guys to see that. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click on the build mode, or double click on the, let's see, how am I going to get out of here? So let me just, there we go, and I can just click on the home. So I just used escape. When in doubt, double click. When in doubt, use escape. And then I clicked on the home button on the far lower left there. All right, the next thing we want to look at is setting up a camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a camera in Rhino, and then I'm going to sync that over here to Lumion. Let's save this Lumion file. I think this is a good time to save it. Head back over to Lumion. Okay, so I'm going to head over to Rhino and make a camera. So that's what we're looking at right now in our outline. We're looking at camera. Okay, so cameras in Rhino, not the most user-friendly, but it's what we have. So I'm going to double click on perspective here, and I'm just going to zoom out in all my views. Okay, so I'm going to turn on my camera. So my perspective view is current. I'm on a laptop, so I'm using function F6. If you're on a desktop, it's just the F6 command, and my camera shows up here. And I can go ahead and I can move this camera around, and you see it rotating in the upper right. I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to change the Z location of the perspective view. So I have to make the perspective view current. And I'm going to change the Z location to 5'6", 54 inches. And I'm going to do that for the camera and the target. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to change the lens length. I'm going to change that to 28. So a nice wide angle camera there. Alright, and I'm going to move this camera in close to the building. So I'm clicking that middle one and I'm moving it in. I want to see a little bit of landscape here. And I'm going to select my target. So that's that point, and I'm going to go ahead and move that. I'm going to try to center this building here. Okay, we're getting closer. I'm not loving it yet. We're getting there. Okay, so there we have something to work with inside of Enscape. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this camera view. So I'm in the perspective view. I'm going to type in named view. And I'm going to click on the little floppy disk. I'm going to call this one eye level. Okay, so I have my eye level view and that's saved and it's current. I'm going to save this file. Now I still have live sync going, so when I go over to Lumion, you'll see that camera shows up as the default camera view here in Lumion. So that's pretty cool. They're just syncing to one another. Alright, so this is a little different than the other camera view that we had, but I think it's going to work just fine. So now to save this in Lumion, and you want to save this in Lumion, I want to click on the camera, and then I click on this photo here, and there's a little camera icon above it. I'm going to click on that. You hear a little snapshot. That keeps that camera, so that camera is now saved. So I'm going to go back to build mode, and I'm going to head over to Rhino, and I'm going to turn off the live sync because I've done everything that I need to do in Rhino. So I'm going to head over to Rhino. I don't know why it's... Okay, so I'm going to turn off the live sync. I don't know if Rhino's crashed on me or what. I see I got the spinning wheel in Rhino. What's going on there? Alright, I'll let Rhino sort that out. Go back to Lumion. Okay, so we looked at cameras. The next thing we want to look at is sun angles. So there's a weather tab inside of Lumion. I can click on that weather tab and right away you're going to see the sun direction and the sun height. So if I lower that sun height down, that's a sky in the background that's changing, going from day to night. So I can do that. I can rotate the sun, so I can go all the way around here 360 degrees and rotate that sun. So that's pretty good. I can change the sun brightness, so I can raise that up or lower that down. So I can change the sun brightness. I can change the cloudiness. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of most of the clouds there. Okay, I just like a nice gradient. Lower left, there's a real skies option, which will use the sun from the real sky. In a future video, I'll look at doing that, look at bringing in different HDRIs in real skies and see how that changes the rendering. And we'll look at it a little bit more at the end of this video when we look at the custom styles inside Lumion. Alright, so this is going pretty good. We looked at the sun angles. Alright, let's see if Rhino is done doing what it was doing. It is done. Alright, so I'm going to stop the live sync. So I'm stopping the live sync. And let's look at our little outline. So we're down here. We just finished sun angles. We looked at sky settings. All we did with sky settings is turn the clouds down. Now we're going to look at materials. We have paint, standard, and grass. So I did a little bit of the painting already. I was kind of excited about that, so I jumped in and did that early on. But this is where we find it on our outline here. So that's our paint. So we're going to look at standard and grass materials. So let's head on back over to Lumion. And I'm just going to zoom out of here a little bit and orbit. Okay, so we can see what we're working with. And I'm going to go over to materials. And I'm going to click on my object. So I'm going to start with the walls. So I'm going to click on the walls. And then I need to go to settings in the upper right. So it's a little tricky. You're clicking on the object that already has a material. Remember, when this came in from Rhino, Lumion already put a material on it called Lumion Walls. Or not Lumion Walls, called Material Wall. So I go to settings. There you see surface material walls here. I can change the color. So I'm going to change the color. I'm going to make this like a bluish green teal color. Alright, so you see that updating there in Lumion. I'm going to take the roughness down. What taking the roughness down does is it adds reflection to it. So a little tricky to see in this window here, but we can start to see a little reflectivity on the walls, and we'll see that more in the camera view. So let's go to our camera view. Let's click on our save settings there. Let's go to photo, and let's double click on the photo, and let's go back to build mode. So there you can see some reflectivity on the walls. Let's go ahead and select the floor, material floor, and go to settings. Here's material floor. I'm going to change its color. It's going to be like a brownish color just to represent wood flooring for now. And I'm going to change the patio. I'm going to make that gray. I'm going to make it a bluish gray, so it's a cooler color. See, that's a cooler gray. Cooler meaning cooler in color temperature. Alright, and then my material landscape, I'm going to make that the grass material. So I'm going to go to materials, and under 3D grass, I'm going to pick, I'm going to try wild grass 1 and see what that looks like. Alright, so that's been placed on there, and you see that's a 3D grass, and it's kind of taking over my patio because the length of it is too long. So if I go to settings and I go down to grass length, I can lower that grass length. Alright, so I'm lowering that so it doesn't come through on my patio. So pretty cool, and I'm going to make a materials video where we're going to dive into all that stuff. We're going to take a deep dive into materials. Alright, this is looking really good. A good time to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And go back to build mode. Go back to build mode. I clicked on more info and it popped up an internet tab. So if I wanted more info or you wanted more info, you could always do that from the home screen. Alright. So now we're going to look at the asset manager. So we're going to set up this little scene. We're going to place some people and some trees and some flowers. And we're going to do that several different ways, and we're going to end up painting the landscape, which I think is really cool. Alright, so head on over back here. Alright. So let's do some painting. Let's zoom out a little bit and orbit and zoom out and orbit and all that good stuff. I'm going to I'm going to move down with my Q key here. I have a nice little file that we're working with. And I'm going to go over to Home, and I'm going to click on Nature. And I'm going to double click on Nature, and it pops up a window for trees here. And these are broadleaf. There's coniferous trees, there's palm, leafless trees for a winter scene. There's all kinds of stuff here. Grass, cactus, everything. So I'm going to go with a tree. I clicked on it and there's several different versions of it. I'm going to go with a taller one. This is an American beech, nice tree. I'm just going to drop it in and just place one tree, and then I'll place another one over here. Okay, so that's one way we can place trees. That at the bottom you see is a single placement. I can also do a mass placement where I click this button and then I click one point and then I click another point and it lays them out in a row like that. I definitely don't like that for trees. That's useful for other things. We can change a lot of things at the bottom. You can see you can change the number of trees. You can change the direction of the trees. Not really good for putting out landscape because it doesn't really look that good, but you can randomize the direction. I can do this, randomize direction, randomize spacing along the line, randomize offset from line, so you start to get those to space out a little bit. So that's not too bad. I mean, that looks okay. So let's place that by double clicking the oops, that's what happened to me before. That's probably a button I shouldn't be double clicking. Alright, so I want to do some I can do cluster placement. Okay, we'll look at that where I can just make a cluster of trees. So I can click once and it makes a cluster of them, and I can click again and it makes a cluster. So there's that option for us. So what I really want to look at is I want to look at painting the trees. So I'm just going to get zoomed out so I can paint my trees. So I'm going to pick paint placement, and I'm going to pick a different tree. Let's go out of this and see what else we have here. I'm not really loving these here. Let's go to page 2, page 3, so you get a sense of all the trees here. I'm going to pick this one, this cherry tree. Try that out. Okay, so you see the density at the bottom is, if I set that lower and I start to paint, those trees will get painted in there. And I think that's super cool. Something happened at the bottom here. Let's click on the check mark to get out of that. Let's try that again. Let's go to the paint placement and let's Lumion. What's going on here in Lumion? Alright, so definitely something going on in Lumion here. So let's save. Let's go back to build mode. Okay, that hasn't changed. So that's super. So that might happen to you. So if that happens to you, we're just going to save it. Let's see if I go back one more time. No. Alright, so we've gone to save. We're going to go to load project, and I'm going to pick the Lumion Basics. Let's see if this works where I don't have to restart Lumion. I might have to restart Lumion. See what happens. Alright, so we were about to place some more trees in, so we'll go to double click on our tree here. Oh yeah, this definitely wants to be restarted. We got the wheel spinning, got everything going right now. Okay, awesome. I love when this happens when I'm making a video. Fantastic. Alright, Lumion, you're gonna go away because we're gonna restart Lumion. So that is why we save, right? That's why we always save at home. We are back up and running. Everything crashed. I had to close down my entire computer. Oh man. Wow. Unbelievable. First time in any video that I've ever made that I had to restart my whole computer. I've had programs crash, but never the whole computer. Alright, so we're painting. We're painting trees in Lumion. Let's get this going. Alright, let's double click on nature here. Now, one thing I didn't do that I'm noticing now is I didn't make a layer for the trees. So that's something you definitely want to do. I want to make a layer here, and I want to edit that layer's name. I'm going to call this trees. So you want to put all your trees on a layer. You want to do that ahead of time. And you want to put your people on a layer and so on. So let's continue painting the trees. Let's look on page 2 here. Let's see here. Let's go to page 3. I'm going to go with this one here, the cedar elm. Okay, I'm going to select that one and I'm going to choose paint placement from the bottom. And I'm going to choose this one. And I'm going to go ahead and the density is pretty high right now. I'm going to lower that density down. And I'm just going to go ahead and paint that. Look at that. Wow. Those are some big trees. Okay, so while I'm painting, I can go ahead and click in my lower left. I can click on the erase selected objects. And I can go in here and kind of thin it out a little bit. Okay, so make it a little bit more realistic by thinning that out. Let's go ahead and paint some more in the background. Alright, and I can use my eraser tool and go in and thin some of that out a little bit. Alright, let's add some more on the far left here. I won't know until I look through my camera to see what I really have here. So let's click the check mark and let's go to our camera and we'll click on photo. Alright, so we got quite a few trees on the back left. I'm really liking that. I like that we can kind of peek through over here on the right so we're not seeing trees all the way through. Let's add some people in the foreground. Let's do that. Alright, so let's go to people, and there are categories. There's men, women, boys, girls, people 3D static. I'm going to use those. So those are just people that are still. So I'm going to use the static people, and I'm going to click this one. I'm going to have Diana sitting here in the foreground, and I'm going to go ahead here and click on select, and then I'm going to click on rotate, and now I can easily rotate Diana there. Alright, so she's reading a book. Let's get some more people. So I didn't make a people layer, of course. So let's do that. Call this people. Make this current. Alright, let's go through here. Let's see what's on page 2. Let's get these people looking at the building. Alright, I can click on the select and the rotate. Let's move them over a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's get some more people in here. We're going to end up painting some people in too. Alright, so let's see page 3. I'm going to find another seated person. Let's see what we got. We got one here. Let's see what else we got. I want to see if we had a group of people sitting. Somewhere in here, I'm sure there is. Let's see. Alright, not getting lucky. Alright, let's go back to page 1. Alright, let's choose these two. There's Andrew there. Let's get Andrew in here. Let's rotate Andrew around. Let's move Andrew over. Okay, let's get a few more. I like someone on a bike in there, so let's get someone on a bike. So let's see, we had some bikes in here. There's a bike. Okay, let's go ahead and place that over here. Let's move this guy over. I like the gizmo. It's really easy to move things and rotate, so that works really pretty nice in here. A little tricky getting it you know, getting the rotate axis the way you want it. Come on. Let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, there's the big green rotate. Alright, so now let's look at getting some people in there by painting the people. Let's zoom out of these. Got the forest in the foreground here. Okay, so let's get some more people in here by painting them. Alright, so we're going to go to those static people that we had, and we're going to go to mass placement. We'll take a look at mass placement, and we're going to add in, so you see the person with the bike is already in there, so we're just going to add in more people. Click on the plus to add that in, add that one in, click on the plus, add in, just start to add in more of these. And you really, to do this, you really have to add in a lot of people, because you are populating a scene, and there's going to be a lot of different people to populate it. But we'll see. We'll add a few more in there. Let's go to page 2 and keep adding people in. Add a few more. Go to the next page. That's 2. We looked at 2. Let's look at 3. Keep adding. Alright, so we'll start with that. That's not plenty, but it's some people, so we'll take a look at that. Okay, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to click a point there on the left, and I'm going to click a point on the right there, and it's putting some people on there. If we increase the number of items, it'll start to show more people on there. I don't want to go too high. Got to give it some time to refresh. Alright, so there's some people there, so we can kind of see these people being populated. So we can do some things. We can randomize their direction, so I'll turn that up, so just kind of randomizing their direction. And I'm going to randomize the spacing along the line, so we get varied spacing, so they're not so much set up on a grid. And we are going to randomize the offset, which makes the area that we're populating wider. So let's go ahead and do that. It's thinking about updating. It's thinking about it. There we go. They're offsetting. Here we go. Now it's kind of come back to life there. Alright, and we'll go ahead and click on the check mark to accept that. Alright, and I also want to put that in the background. I want to put some more people in the background. So I'm going to put some people in the back here. So same method. There's a cluster placement, but it only places one person at a time with the cluster, so it's one person clustered throughout. It's not multiple people. So I'm going to go back to the mass placement, keep my same people there, and do this again. Click one point, click another point. It's already remembering my settings from last time, so I can click the check mark. So that looks pretty good. Let's see what that looks like from the camera view. Alright, so we have some people, we have some trees. I'd like to put in some flowers in the foreground. I think that always looks really nice. So let's do that. Let's go back to our build mode, and let's go over to nature, and let's go to plants. Okay, those are plants. I want flowers. Let's go to flower. Okay, so I'm going to drop these in individually. So I'm going to go to the single placement and drop these in individually here. So we'll have one there. We'll pick a yellow one to put next to it, kind of embedded with it. Put one over here, pick another one there. So that's really nice. We're getting some flowers in the foreground, which I really like. Let's put put in a couple more, kind of dropping it behind the screen there. All right, this is a really good setup. Let's go with this. Let's save it. Okay, so let's save it. It's making me save as for the first time. This is our Lumion Basics. All right, how are we doing? Let's click on build mode. Let's go back over to our outline. Okay, so we've looked at the asset manager and we've painted in some landscape. So we're getting toward the end. Now we're going to look at effects and filters, custom style daylight. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's go back over to Lumion. Okay, so we're going to go to, let's get out of this mode. So let's go to home. Let's escape out of this and go to home. And now let's look at adding some effects to this. All right, so I'm going to go to my picture mode. Click on photo there. And it's not a bad looking rendering. I mean, it's looking pretty good, but it can be better. It can have more realism to it. So over here we have effects. So I can individually place effects. So I can go to effects and I can look through my different effects. There's all kinds of effects here. Conceptual, architectural, lighting, sky, cameras. We'll look at depth of field in a little bit. But let's just go to the first one and let's look at color correction. That's one that we can typically do here. It's something some people do in Photoshop, but with Lumion having that built in, you might want to do that directly in Lumion. So things like exposure. Exposure value is always an important setting in your rendering. So I can raise the exposure or I can lower the exposure. So that's available to me. I can do things like contrast, highlights, midtones. Look at all these things we can do under color correction. I'm going to look at saturation. The image is too saturated, so I'm going to desaturate it. So I'm taking some color out of it just to give it more realism to it. So I've taken some saturation out. So you can add these effects individually, or in the top left here, you can go to custom style and add a stack of them. So Lumion comes with all these rendering styles: realistic, interior, daytime, night, watercolor, overcast, dawn. I'm going to go with daytime. I'm going to choose daytime. And it's going to give me a stack of effects. And my color correction is still in there. It just placed it third way down. And that's shown with a black background instead of a blue background, which means I've edited that effect. I've modified it. And it says style effect modified. So I'm going to go to real skies and I'm going to modify that. I'm going to look at the best position for my sun. So you see I can do this in real time. And what I want to do is I want to light the left side and have the right side in shadow. So let's see if I can get that set up. Alright, let's see where that's best. Alright, so here, that's lighting the left side. There we go with my right side in shadow. And the left side is lit. I don't think that's the best for this particular camera view. So let's go with that one there. Let's see how that's going to work out for us. So I can go click the back button. This button here would undo the changes. I click the back button, that applies it. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. It's a little burnt out, so the sun is a little too strong. So we can go back to, let's go back, we can do it under color correction, or we can look at real skies and we can look at the brightness. Now that's just going to change the brightness of the background. Okay, there is an overall brightness here. That's not really doing much to the foreground. So I'm going to need to go to my color correction and I can go to exposure and I can turn that exposure down a little bit. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. Alright, so let's go to FX and let's go to camera and let's choose depth of field. Alright, so here's my depth of field. So I'm going to kick up the amount so it's going to get really blurry. So, alright, I want it really blurry to begin with, and then I want to choose my focal distance. So my focal distance, I'm going to focus this right on the building. So that's going back into the trees. You see that's focusing on the trees. I'm going to come forward and I'm going to focus right there on the building. Now some people like focusing on the flowers. You know, you can do a focus on the foreground. That's pretty cool, but this is an architectural rendering, so I want to focus on the building. So I'm going to go and I'm going to focus right there on the building, and I'm going to take the amount down so there's not so much of it, so just a little bit of depth of field, so things in the foreground are a little bit blurry. Alright, this is looking really good. I'm going to go back here to my stack. Alright, let's look at what else we need to do. I think that's all of it. Depth of field and now render output. So let's go back over to Lumion, and we're going to render this out. So there's a little button in the lower right for render photo. So we're going to click on that, and there's additional outputs. So there's depth maps, there's normal maps, there's specular reflection, there's lighting maps, there's an alpha channel. So if you want the background to be transparent and you want to do that in Photoshop, you're going to need to save an alpha channel to do that. Alright, so we're going to do this at the desktop. We're going to do this at 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to want me to save this. So this is going to be my Lumion Basics JPEG. That's going to be the file type that it saves it as. I'm going to click save. It's going to take a little while to export that out. It's thinking about it. There we go. We got a spinning wheel. Alright, so now it's going to just go through and export that image out. So it's doing the sample. So, you know, it's going to tell you on the bottom how long it takes. It's going to take maybe minutes on this computer to output that. So not too bad for a real-time rendering at 1920 by 1080. Alright, here we go. So you see on the left the time elapsed. It took about 45 seconds to do that. It tells me when it's done. I can open the folder. I can take a look at that JPEG. And there that JPEG is. Alright, Lumion Basics. We got through it. How awesome was that? My head's going to pop up in the top left. Go ahead and click on that if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. A couple of Lumion videos are going to pop up in the upper right and the lower right. And have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.